Hey, it is I, again, Cecilia, and today we are going to be dwelling into the magnificent world of tropes. If there's one thing you gotta know about me is that I'm an absolute sucker for romance stories, especially manga or anime, and those are often riddled with tropes. Though, we could say that about most mediums of storytelling anyways. I like all kinds of romance stories, even ones that are usually deemed cringy or bad. I don't know, the predictability of the more standard story structures is very comforting to me, and I can get into the story quite easily if the characters are even remotely cool and there's even the tiniest amount of chemistry between the characters. Basically, I'm not picky, but I can distinguish between what I think is good or bad. Tropes are a funny thing like that. It's sometimes difficult to avoid them, but if you indulge them too much, your writing can be deemed lazy and overdone. Honestly, to hell with that. I don't think tropes are inherently lazy at all. The ones in romance are usually stuff that became tropes out of some amount of wishful thinking, no? You indulge tropes because you want to see more of it, as I understand, right? Like, for me, there are some pretty neat tropes that I squeal at every time I see them, no matter how often I've already seen them. But there are also some I groan at, and some other ones I just cannot wrap my head around. In that category, there's two that I can think of in particular. The first one is one I've seen time and time again in a baffling number of shoujo mangas, and it just makes me wonder whether this has some cultural meaning, or some lore, or it's just something practical, or even just personal preference of the authors that I don't know about. I tried researching it and see if it was born due to some sort of storytelling pattern or norm they needed to stick to, but I couldn't find much, mostly because I was unsure how to research it. This trope is the trope of the male lead or any sort of romantic interest in a shoujo romance just picking up a lock of hair of the heroine and gently kissing it in usually dramatic scenes meant to be very endearing or otherwise significant. To me, this trope just feels kind of weird. I'm not sure whether it's meant to have some sort of deeper meaning, but I really just find it very confusing. I always end up imagining the scenario of this happening in real life, and the image makes me wince a bit because of how matter-of-fact it's usually done. So, definitely not my cup of tea. The second one that's in the realm of not making any sense is this one that happens way more often than it should in my opinion. The one where the two romantic interests bump into each other or fall off the stairs together or some other stuff like that, and they end up kissing in slow motion in the most tender ways. Like, no! What you guys actually have is a concussion and a bloody mouth. Even just lightly banging your teeth together hurts a lot from what I've heard, not to mention a full-on frontal collision. No matter how many pretty pink roses and glitter you put in the atmosphere, it is still wholly impossible for it to be anything other than physically painful. Entering the groan-worthy territory is one trope that I find to be painfully annoying. It's the "I'll change him into a good boy" trope. Not only is that one a harmful outlook for girls everywhere, it just plain discredits one's ability to change of their own accord. Sure, you can be at the side of someone willing to make the journey themselves, but you cannot just have a heroine set on a journey to turn a genuinely toxic male lead into an acceptable human being. I'll read stories like this regardless because, like I said, I'm not very picky, but I really think this is a tired trope that just promotes unhealthy behavior if someone were to apply it to real life as is. And then there's this one big gargantuan trope that's just all kinds of bad. And one of the few that really has ever made me physically put down a manga or love story. It just makes me highly uncomfortable and angry whenever I see it. This is way beyond groan-worthy, and I really wish this trope would just stop being used in fiction because it promotes unhealthy relationship dynamics, and it makes me feel bad about how people are being portrayed in romance, especially men in this case, for this particular trope. They somehow always need to be like a big manly man who's sort of aggressive and mean and edgy and impulsive for no reason, and the next trope is really leaning into it too much, and it's just that. Damaging. For all parties involved. I understand how people are free to write the stories they want to write, but I feel like some sort of fundamental change has to happen in order for a more diverse cast of characters and character dynamics to be explored, other than the next trope I'm about to say. In this trope, the usually male lead at the head of the relationship is just plain forceful. And you can see from the way the characters are drawn that the girl is not into it. The scene is not remotely cute or romantic, it's just painful and mean and inappropriate. In stories like these, the, quote, romance is advanced via a series of forceful actions that one character forces the other character in the relationship to endure, be it an aggressively stolen kiss, humiliation, even going as far as sexual harassment. This is usually the male lead forcing the female lead, and it really just makes me mad. I am really unable to read such things because I can imagine it happening way too easily, unfortunately. And these kinds of, quote, romance stories romanticize abuse, and it is just simply abhorrent. I am really tired of this insulting stereotype that men should be aggressive and assertive and a leader at all times, good or bad, and I really just want to see it changed up more often with more nuanced characters that reflect actual people, even if fiction is meant to be a form of caricature of real life. Making men mean and women submissive and meek in fiction is really not helping and is just an insult to everyone. Whew, that one made me angry. But my point is, a romance story does not need aggressive heroes for it to be interesting, though I know there are some stories that utilize these types of tropes to show off the disgusting nature of it, to make an edgy, dark story. But in romance, I will always stand by my opinion, which is that you can convey attraction of the characters to each other with totally benign and cute, attentive things, instead of straight up bending them backwards on a table without warning. Now to move on to some more pleasant grounds. A while back I asked over on Instagram about people's favorite romance tropes. Although I have reacted to them then and there, I feel like I have more to say about some of them, so here we go! Here's one of the first answers that I've got that was really baffling to me actually because I did not expect it. It's the love triangle trope. I can see the appeal of the trope. Attractive people being attracted to another attractive person who just can't make up their mind. But I think this is a quite polarizing one. I am not personally fond of this one trope. I understand that storytelling-wise, this trope is an easy way to create tension between the characters in the story that otherwise either has an entirely different goal or is just an additional eye candy for the readers. I also realize that the will it won't it aspect of it can be thrilling. But I, for one, am quite tired of this one because given the amount of romance stories I've watched, read, and games I've played, I can usually predict in a shoujo romance, for example, which person the hero will choose in the end. And it's many times the first dude they meet. Sometimes the second one, but that's one of the rarer occasions. I prefer my romance wholesome and squeal-worthy of characters pining for each other gradually and exploring each other instead of, sorry about this, the sort of superficiality of a love triangle, and the love interest competing for the main character's attention in acts of weird quote-unquote chivalry. I don't know, it's just sort of annoying for me. And that's my 2 cents on that. The next one that made me curious was this one, the childhood best friend trope. I actually cannot say that much about this one because I realized that I have really not seen all that many stories where the childhood best friend is the love interest. It's quite baffling actually. But I feel like this kind of relationship would be one of those that would actually work out as one of the best if we were to apply it in real life. No? Like, it's natural to think that your feelings may morph into love over time, just as natural as it not morphing, mind you, so don't expect your childhood friend to fall in love with you all of a sudden. But the possibility is always there. Very insightful. The next trope I received was really famous / rich guy and ordinary girl. And all I can say is that, yes, this trope is just so extremely funny. Because the male lead is usually portrayed as a bumbling idiot who doesn't know the first thing about taking care of himself outside of his fame and wealth, and it makes for some incredible interactions and character growth throughout the story. I will forever have Ouran high school host clubs, teaching rich people how to make instant coffee scene burned into my mind. It's just pure gold. Chef's kiss. Maybe a bit overdone, crispy and burnt on the sides, but so self-indulgent that it's just extremely comforting to the soul. And as a final trope, let me unwrap you the trope that will forever make me squeal irrationally for reasons I am not even sure of. The trope of the icy, no expression guy slowly but surely falling in love with a literal ball of sunshine of a girl. These male characters are usually highly analytical and practical and are just super confused as to why they even care to listen to the very bubbly and random girl who is disorganized, disheveled, and usually not that bright, but very loving. An example, more or less, of this in the shoujo genre would be a manga titled Our Precious Conversations, or Boku to Kimi no Taisetsu na Hanashi, which basically follows the story of a girl and a boy as they learn more about each other through conversations at first. It begins when the girl, having never spoken to him previously, confesses to him while they are waiting at the train station, to which he's basically like, no thanks, I don't even know you. And after that, they start talking about how they are very different from one another and how they view the world from their respective point of views. I have not yet finished reading it all, but the story is very funny and heartwarming overall. This trope can be more or less exaggerated. In the case of Our Precious Conversations, it's much more nuanced. Neither characters are too exaggerated, but, well, many of their differences they themselves explain to be a boy or girl issue, which I find a bit iffy at times, but the setting of the story makes it always lighthearted. And to be honest, their problems and differences are sometimes super ridiculous too, so I guess liking this trope might make me a hypocrite of sorts. It does rely on certain stereotypes, but I still just really like this kind of character dynamic. I'm not exactly sure why, because there are many elements that I like of it. The main one, I suppose, would be that the stories I've read with this trope have always been very lighthearted and fun. It always sort of just lifted me up after reading them. And that sort of just stuck with me. In other stories utilizing this trope, I like it when the dude is suddenly hit by the oh shit moment of realization that he does indeed harbor feelings for the girl and just goes bright red and is totally floored. I like the funny shenanigans these stories have where the dude is dragged into situations that are so ridiculous and he has to just deal with it and get out of it with unconventional and stupid methods. It's just so sweet. And this trope is not the same as the love changes a bad boy into a good boy trope. Nah. In these stories, the characters don't usually change all that much by the end of it. It's sort of the two opposite personalities learn to complete each other, and analytical boy adapts to random girl, and vice versa. I guess it's this sort of completion of it that I like, that you don't need to fundamentally change yourself for the person you love, but that they are two halves of one whole. Whew. So, yeah. Tropes. We use them for a reason, but not always a good reason. In the case of romance stories, it can simply boil down to a form of wishful thinking of wanting to see a specific scenario. Everyone has their one little thing they like, and it makes them happy to see over and over again. Honestly, I don't think the wishful thinking of harmless romance tropes is bad. Even I have tropes I'd love to write, but with my own spin on it. But tropes perpetuating stereotypes of race, gender, or one's orientation is without a single inch of doubt damaging. We need to start to be more innovative in our storytelling, though you can still continue to write what you want to see/read yourself, but within reason. This video took forever to make, and I still feel like I left a bunch of things out, so if you want to hear more rants like this, let me know in the comments down below. Anyhow, you can check out the high-res finished drawing of this video on my Patreon. Thank you very much to all of my patrons, including Jace, Alberto Jimenez, Robert, Nick Gromacki, Britt, and Kelly Anning. Like and subscribe for more art-related videos, and visit my Instagram at made_by_Cecilia or Twitter with the same handle. We've also got a Discord server where we hang out and chat. All links are in the description below. Thank you very much again, and I'll see you next time!